You spent 12 years of your life earning a piece of paper that promised you security. But what if that same piece of paper is actually the reason you're struggling to get ahead? While the world changed, the classroom stayed exactly the same, and it's teaching you a set of rules that are designed to keep you working for someone else's dream, rather than building your own. Most of us were raised on a simple lie. Go to school, get good grades, and the money will follow. But look around. We have the most educated generation in history, yet more people are living paycheck to paycheck than ever before. In this session, we're breaking down the silent financial trap hidden inside traditional education. We aren't just talking about what schools forgot to teach you. We're exposing the specific psychological patterns they did teach you that are actively blocking your path to true financial freedom. If you've ever felt like you're working harder than your bank account suggests, this is why. It's time to unlearn the classroom and start learning the business of wealth. Chapter 1. The Industrial Age Blueprint. Imagine walking into a modern classroom. Rows of desks are neatly arranged. A bell signals when learning begins and ends. Students are expected to arrive on time, follow instructions, complete assigned tasks, ask for permission before speaking, and move from one subject to another according to a fixed schedule. Now, imagine walking into a factory during the early industrial age. Workers arrive at a specific time. Bells signal the beginning and end of shifts. Tasks are assigned by supervisors. Procedures are standardized. Efficiency, obedience, and consistency are valued above all else. The similarities are difficult to ignore. Most people assume that schools were designed primarily to help individuals discover their unique talents and achieve their highest potential. While that may be the intention of many teachers today, the structure of the modern education system has roots that tell a different story. To understand why, we need to go back in time. Before the Industrial Revolution, most people learned through apprenticeships, family businesses, farming, or direct experience. Education was often practical and closely connected to daily life. Children learned by observing, participating, and solving real-world problems. Then everything changed. Factories began appearing across Europe and North America. Large companies needed workers who could arrive on schedule, follow instructions, perform repetitive tasks, and operate within highly structured environments. Industry didn't just need educated people. It needed predictable people. As governments and business leaders sought to create a workforce capable of meeting these demands, mass public education expanded rapidly. Schools became a way to prepare large numbers of people for industrial employment. The goal was understandable. Factories required discipline. They required punctuality. They required conformity. And schools were designed to teach those behaviors. Students learned to sit quietly. They learned to follow directions. They learned to complete assignments according to instructions. They learned that authority figures determined what was important and how success would be measured. These skills were valuable in an industrial economy. The problem is that the world has changed dramatically while many aspects of the educational model have remained the same. Today's economy rewards creativity, adaptability, innovation, communication, and problem-solving more than ever before. Yet many students continue moving through a system that was largely designed for a different era. This doesn't mean education is useless. Far from it. Reading, writing, mathematics, science, and critical thinking are essential skills. The issue is not education itself. The issue is believing that traditional education alone provides everything needed for financial success in the modern world. Consider some of the most important skills required to build wealth. Identifying opportunities, solving problems, negotiating effectively, understanding human behavior, managing risk, creating value, building systems, leading people. Most individuals receive little formal training in these areas during their school years. Instead, success is often measured by how accurately students repeat information and how well they perform on standardized tests. This creates an important distinction. Schools are generally designed to evaluate knowledge. The marketplace rewards value. Those are not always the same thing. A student may memorize information well enough to earn top grades while never learning how to solve real-world problems. Another student may struggle within a traditional classroom, yet develop exceptional skills in sales, leadership, entrepreneurship, or innovation. One receives praise. The other may be labeled average. Years later, the financial outcomes can look very different. This is one reason why some of the wealthiest individuals in the world were not necessarily the best students. Their success did not come from mastering the educational system. It came from mastering value creation. They learned how to identify needs, solve problems, and deliver solutions that people were willing to pay for. The marketplace rewards those abilities generously. Unfortunately, many people graduate believing that success follows a simple formula. Get good grades, earn a diploma, find a stable job, work hard. Everything else will take care of itself. For some people, this path works reasonably well. For many others, it leads to frustration. They follow the rules exactly as instructed, only to discover that financial security remains elusive. The reason is simple. The economy no longer guarantees rewards simply for compliance. It rewards adaptability. It rewards initiative. It rewards continuous learning. Most importantly, it rewards those who create value that others find useful. The industrial age blueprint trained generations of people to fit into existing systems. Today's opportunities often belong to those who can create new systems. That requires a different mindset. Instead of asking, "What job can I get?" you begin asking, "What problems can I solve?" Instead of asking, "What instructions should I follow?" you begin asking, "What opportunities can I create?" Instead of focusing exclusively on credentials, you focus on capabilities. Because in the modern economy, your ability to create value frequently matters more than the certificates hanging on your wall. This realization can be uncomfortable. Many people have invested years believing that formal education was the complete answer. Discovering its limitations may feel unsettling, but it is also liberating, because once you understand the blueprint, you stop expecting it to provide everything. You recognize what it does well. You recognize what it does poorly, and you begin taking responsibility for learning the skills that schools often overlook. The truth is that your diploma is not the problem. The problem is believing that it is the finish line. Education should be a foundation, not a destination. A starting point, not a complete roadmap. Chapter 2, The Good Grades Delusion. From the moment we enter school, we're given a simple message. Get good grades, and you'll be successful. The formula sounds logical. Study hard, pass your tests, earn top marks, graduate with honors, build a great life. For many students, grades become more than measurements of academic performance. They become measurements of self-worth. A high grade means you're smart. A low grade means you're falling behind. Over time, this belief becomes deeply ingrained. The problem is that the real world doesn't operate the same way a classroom does. In school, success is usually defined by finding the correct answer. In business, success is often defined by finding an answer that nobody else has discovered yet. In school, you're rewarded for following instructions. In the marketplace, you're often rewarded for questioning assumptions and creating new solutions. In school, the path is clearly defined. In life, there's often no map at all. This creates a major disconnect. Many high achievers spend years mastering a system that rewards certainty. They learn how to avoid mistakes, memorize information, and perform well under structured conditions. These skills are valuable, but they can also create an unexpected weakness, a fear of failure. Think about what happens when a student receives a poor grade. The mistake is recorded permanently. The student is penalized. Failure becomes something to avoid at all costs. As a result, many people develop a habit of playing it safe. They choose the answer they know will be accepted. They avoid taking risks. They seek approval before acting. These behaviors help in school, but they can become obstacles in the real world. Wealth creation often requires the opposite approach. Starting a business involves uncertainty. Investing involves uncertainty. Innovation involves uncertainty. Every major opportunity carries the possibility of failure. The people who build extraordinary success are not necessarily those who avoid mistakes. They are often those who learn from mistakes faster than everyone else. Consider some of the most successful entrepreneurs in history. Many were not straight-A students. Some struggled in traditional classrooms altogether. This doesn't mean education is unimportant. It means that academic excellence and financial success are not the same thing. One measures your ability to succeed within a structured system. The other measures your ability to create value in an unpredictable world. The skills overlap occasionally, but they are not identical. Another issue with grade-focused thinking is that it encourages people to seek external validation. Students become accustomed to waiting for someone else to tell them they're doing well. Teachers assign the grades. Schools define success. Authority figures provide approval. Eventually, many people carry this mindset into adulthood. They continue looking for permission. Permission to start a business. Permission to invest. Permission to pursue a dream. Permission to take a different path. Meanwhile, the most successful individuals often give themselves permission. They trust their judgment. They take initiative. They move forward before they have complete certainty. This ability is rarely measured on a report card, yet it can dramatically influence financial outcomes. The truth is that grades are useful indicators of academic performance. They can open doors to educational opportunities. They can demonstrate discipline and work ethic, but they are not predictors of wealth. They do not measure creativity. They do not measure courage. They do not measure leadership. They do not measure resilience. And they certainly do not measure your ability to create value in the marketplace. Some of the most financially successful people were average students. Some top-performing students never achieve financial freedom. The difference is often found in the skills that exist beyond the classroom. Communication, problem-solving, adaptability, risk management, negotiation, sales, leadership. These abilities rarely appear on a transcript, yet they frequently determine long-term success. The greatest danger of the good grades delusion is not that grades matter. It's believing they are all that matters. Because once you believe that, you stop developing the skills that truly separate financial winners from everyone else. The goal should never be to reject education. The goal should be to understand its limitations. Good grades can be helpful, but they are not a financial strategy. They are not a guarantee. And they are not the ultimate measure of your potential. Your future will be determined far more by the value you create than the grades you once received. The world rewards results, not report cards. And once you understand that distinction, you stop chasing approval and start building capability. That is where real opportunity begins. Chapter 3: The Employee Mindset Trap. Imagine spending 12 or more years in an environment where almost every important decision is made for you. Someone else decides when you arrive. Someone else decides what you study. Someone else decides what success looks like. Someone else decides whether your work is acceptable. This structure creates a habit that most people never notice. It teaches dependency. From an early age, students learn to wait for instructions before taking action. They learn to follow directions, complete assignments, and seek approval from authority figures. Again, this is not necessarily a flaw. Schools are designed to manage large groups of students efficiently. The problem begins when this mindset follows people into adulthood. Many graduates enter the workforce expecting someone else to provide the roadmap. They wait for opportunities instead of creating them. They wait for promotions instead of increasing their value. They wait for permission instead of taking initiative. Over time, this becomes the employee mindset trap. The trap is not employment itself. There is nothing wrong with having a job. Many successful entrepreneurs started as employees. The trap is believing that someone else is responsible for your future. People with an employee mindset often ask, What should I do next? People with an ownership mindset ask, what can I create next? That difference may seem small, but it changes everything. One mindset looks for instructions. The other looks for opportunities. One depends on external direction. The other develops internal direction. This is why some people remain stuck for years despite working hard. They have been trained to respond rather than initiate. They are excellent at following systems, but uncomfortable building their own. Meanwhile, wealth is often created by those who identify problems and develop solutions before anyone asks them to. They don't wait for assignments. They create value proactively. Another consequence of the employee mindset is the belief that security comes from a paycheck. While a paycheck can provide stability, it can also create dependence. When a single employer becomes your only source of income, your financial future becomes tied to decisions you do not control. True financial strength comes from developing skills, assets, and opportunities that exist beyond a single job. This requires initiative, and initiative is rarely taught in a traditional classroom. The good news is that mindsets can change. You could train yourself to think differently. You can begin asking better questions. Instead of asking, what job should I get? Ask, what problems can I solve? Instead of asking, who will give me an opportunity? Ask, how can I create one? Instead of waiting for permission, start taking responsibility. The moment you stop viewing yourself as a follower of opportunities and start viewing yourself as a creator of opportunities, your entire perspective changes. Because wealth is rarely built by people who wait. It is built by people who act. And the sooner you escape the employee mindset trap, the sooner you begin thinking like the person capable of creating the future you truly want. Chapter 4. The Debt-First Foundation. Imagine turning 18 years old and being encouraged to make one of the biggest financial decisions of your life. Not after years of studying money. Not after learning about investing. Not after understanding interest rates, debt cycles, or financial planning. Before any of that, for millions of young people, this is exactly what happens. They graduate from high school and are immediately told that the next step is college, regardless of the cost. The conversation often focuses on getting accepted, choosing a major, and securing financial aid. Very little attention is given to what the debt will actually mean. Many students sign loan agreements without fully understanding how interest works. They are told that education is an investment and that future earnings will make the debt worthwhile. Sometimes that is true. Sometimes it isn't. The problem is not education itself. The problem is making a massive financial commitment before understanding the financial system. Think about how strange this would sound in any other situation. Would a bank hand someone a large business loan without ensuring they understood interest? Would an investor commit substantial money without evaluating the risks? Yet young adults are often expected to take on years or even decades of debt while possessing little financial knowledge. This creates what can be called a debt-first foundation. Instead of beginning adulthood by building assets, many people begin by accumulating liabilities. Their financial journey starts with monthly payments. Before they buy a home, before they invest, before they build savings, they're already obligated to repay debt. The long-term impact can be significant. Debt influences career decisions. A graduate with large loan payments may prioritize immediate income over long-term opportunity. They may avoid entrepreneurial ventures because the financial risk feels too great. They may remain in jobs they dislike simply because the bills must be paid. The debt doesn't just affect money. It affects freedom. One of the greatest advantages in life is flexibility. The ability to take calculated risks. The ability to pursue opportunities. The ability to adapt when circumstances change. Heavy debt can reduce that flexibility. It can make every decision feel more urgent and every setback feel more dangerous. This is why understanding debt is so important. Debt itself is not always bad. Businesses use debt. Investors use debt. Homeowners use debt. The difference is that successful people understand exactly how the debt works and how it will be repaid. They view debt as a tool, not a default setting. Unfortunately, many young adults never receive this education. They learn how to solve equations. They learn historical dates. They learn scientific concepts. Yet they graduate without understanding compound interest, credit scores, loan structures, or the true cost of borrowing money. As a result, they enter adulthood financially vulnerable. The irony is impossible to ignore. People are often taught how to qualify for debt before they are taught how to build wealth. The focus is on borrowing. Rarely is the focus on ownership. Rarely is the focus on investing. Rarely is the focus on creating assets that generate income. This creates a cycle that can persist for years. A person takes on debt to get an education. They seek employment to repay the debt. The need for repayment limits their options. Their financial life becomes centered around obligations rather than opportunities. Again, this does not mean higher education is a mistake. For many careers, advanced education provides tremendous value. The key is understanding the financial implications before making the commitment. Education should be a calculated investment, not an automatic decision. Every investment deserves analysis. What is the cost? What is the expected return? What are the risks? What alternatives exist? These are financial questions, and they should be asked before signing any long-term agreement. The most financially successful individuals understand something important. Income matters, but ownership matters even more. They focus on acquiring assets, developing skills, and creating opportunities that increase their freedom rather than restrict it. They recognize that every financial decision either expands options or reduces them. As you move forward, remember this. The goal is not simply to avoid debt. The goal is to understand it. Because debt can either become a burden that controls your future or a tool that serves your goals. The difference is knowledge. And knowledge is something far too many people are expected to acquire only after they've already signed the paperwork. That is the danger of a debt-first foundation. It places the financial burden before the financial education. And for many people, that becomes the first major obstacle on the road to wealth. Chapter 5, What's Missing? The Financial Literacy Gap. Think about everything you learned during your years in school. You studied mathematics, science, history, language, geography, and countless other subjects. You spent thousands of hours in classrooms preparing for exams, completing assignments, and earning grades. Now ask yourself a simple question. How many of those hours were spent learning how money actually works? For most people, the answer is shocking. Very few. Some receive a brief introduction to economics. Others may take an optional personal finance course. But millions of students graduate without ever learning the basic financial skills that will affect them for the rest of their lives. They enter adulthood knowing how to solve equations, but not how to file taxes. They understand historical events, but not how compound interest can build wealth. They can analyze literature, but cannot explain the difference between an asset and a liability. This is the financial literacy gap, and it may be one of the most expensive gaps in modern education. The reality is that money touches nearly every aspect of life. Where you live, what opportunities you pursue, how much freedom you have, when you retire, the level of stress you experience. Yet the subject receives surprisingly little attention in traditional education. As a result, many people learn about money the hard way. They learn through mistakes, through debt, through poor financial decisions, through missed opportunities. Unfortunately, those lessons can be costly. One of the first concepts many people never fully understand is budgeting. Some hear the word and immediately think of restriction. They imagine giving up everything they enjoy. But a budget is not about limiting your life. It's about directing your money intentionally. Without a plan, money tends to disappear. With a plan, money becomes a tool. Another critical topic often overlooked is compound interest. This simple concept has the power to transform financial futures. Money invested today can grow year after year, creating gains on top of previous gains. Over time, small amounts can become substantial amounts. Yet many students spend years learning advanced mathematics without ever seeing how this principle works in real life. Then there's credit. Credit affects the ability to buy homes, secure loans, and access financial opportunities. Yet countless young adults receive credit cards before understanding how credit scores are calculated or how interest charges accumulate. A lack of knowledge can lead to years of unnecessary financial struggle. Investing presents another major gap. Many people spend decades working for money, but never learn how to make money work for them. They save when they can. They earn wages, but they never discover the power of owning assets that appreciate over time. As a result, they remain dependent on active income long after they could have begun building passive wealth. Perhaps the greatest consequence of financial illiteracy is fear. People fear what they do not understand. They avoid investing because it feels complicated. They avoid financial planning because it feels overwhelming. They avoid important decisions because they lack confidence. Knowledge reduces fear. The more you understand money, the more control you gain over your financial future. This is why self-education becomes so important. If schools don't teach these skills adequately, the responsibility eventually falls on the individual. That may seem unfair, but is also empowering, because financial knowledge has never been more accessible. Books, podcasts, online courses, mentors, educational videos. The information is available to anyone willing to seek it. The people who achieve financial success are often not those with the most formal education. They're the ones who commit to learning continuously. They understand that financial literacy is not a one-time lesson. It is a lifelong skill. Every new concept increases their confidence. Every lesson improves their decision-making. Every insight strengthens their ability to create wealth. The irony is difficult to ignore. Many students spend over a decade preparing for life without learning one of life's most important subjects: money. Not because money is everything, but because understanding money affects nearly everything else. The good news is that it is never too late to close the gap. You do not need permission. You do not need a classroom. You do not need a diploma. You simply need curiosity and commitment. Because once you understand how money works, you stop reacting to financial situations. You start controlling them. And that shift can change the trajectory of your entire life. The financial literacy gap is real. But unlike many obstacles, it can be closed one lesson at a time. The question is not whether the education system taught you enough. The question is whether you are willing to continue learning after it ends. Chapter 6: The Safety Illusion. Ask a group of people what the safest path in life is, and many will give a similar answer. Get a good job. Work hard. Stay loyal to the company. Collect a paycheck. Repeat for the next 40 years. For generations, this advice was considered the gold standard of financial security. And in some cases, it worked. Large companies offered stable careers. Employees could expect long-term employment, predictable raises, and pensions that helped support retirement. The problem is that the world has changed. Today's economy moves faster than ever before. Industries rise and fall. Technology disrupts entire professions. Companies merge, downsize, relocate, and automate. The idea that a single job can guarantee lifelong security is becoming increasingly uncertain. Yet many people continue believing that employment automatically equals safety. This belief creates what we can call the safety illusion. The illusion is not that jobs are bad. Jobs can provide valuable income, experience, and opportunities. The illusion is believing that depending on a single source of income is somehow risk-free. Imagine an investor placing every dollar they own into a single stock. Most financial advisors would call that risky. If that one investment performs poorly, the consequences can be severe. Now consider someone who relies entirely on one employer for all of their income. If the company struggles, downsizes, or eliminates their position, the result can be just as disruptive. Yet society often views this arrangement as completely normal. The reality is that concentration creates vulnerability. Diversification creates resilience. This principle applies to investing. It applies to business. And it applies to personal finances. The financially strongest individuals rarely depend on a single source of income. They develop multiple streams of value. Some invest. Some build businesses. Some create side projects. Some develop specialized skills that increase their opportunities. The exact strategy varies, but the underlying principle remains the same. Never allow your future to depend entirely on one source. Diversification does not eliminate risk. Nothing can, but it reduces the impact of any single setback. If one income stream decreases, another may continue growing. If one opportunity disappears, another may emerge. This flexibility creates real security. Another reason the safety illusion persists is that certainty feels comfortable. People often choose predictability over possibility. A familiar paycheck feels safer than an uncertain opportunity, even when the long-term potential is significantly greater. The challenge is that comfort and security are not always the same thing. Something can feel safe while quietly becoming more fragile. A person may remain in a job they dislike for years because it feels secure. Meanwhile, they neglect skill development, networking, investing, and other activities that could strengthen their future. They become increasingly dependent on the very thing they believe is protecting them. Then one unexpected change reveals how vulnerable the situation really was. True security comes from capability. It comes from knowing that regardless of what happens, you can adapt, learn, and create value. Skills travel with you. Knowledge travels with you. Experience travels with you. No company can take those things away. This is why personal growth is one of the best investments you can make. The more valuable your skills become, the more opportunities become available. The more adaptable you become, the less you fear change. The more capable you become, the less dependent you are on any single circumstance. Financial freedom is not built on certainty. It is built on adaptability. The people who thrive in uncertain environments are rarely those with the most guarantees. They are the ones who can adjust quickly, learn continuously, and recognize opportunities when conditions change. That is real security, not the promise that nothing will ever go wrong, but the confidence that you can handle whatever does. The safety illusion encourages dependence. True financial security encourages preparation. One relies on external circumstances remaining stable. The other relies on your ability to grow. And history has repeatedly shown which approach is more reliable. The goal is not to abandon your job. The goal is to stop believing that a job alone is enough. Build skills. Build assets. Build relationships. Build additional sources of value. Because the safest path is rarely the one that appears safest on the surface. It is the one that gives you the greatest ability to adapt when life inevitably changes. That is the difference between the illusion of security and the reality of it. And understanding that difference may be one of the most important financial lessons you'll ever learn. Chapter 7. Trading Time for Money. For most people, earning money follows a simple formula. You work, you get paid. The more hours you work, the more money you earn. At first glance, this seems reasonable. After all, effort should be rewarded. The problem is that this model contains a hidden limitation that few people recognize until much later in life. Your time is finite. No matter how ambitious, hardworking, or talented you are, there are only 24 hours in a day. Once your income is directly tied to your time, your earning potential becomes limited by the number of hours you can work. This is one of the biggest financial lessons that schools rarely discuss. From an early age, most people are conditioned to think like workers. Study hard, get a job, work more, earn more. The assumption is that increasing effort automatically increases income. But eventually, every worker encounters the same problem. There is a ceiling. You can work overtime. You can take on extra shifts. You can even work multiple jobs. There comes a point where there are simply no more hours left to sell. This is why many hardworking people struggle financially despite doing everything they were told to do. Their income grows slowly because it remains connected to their personal labor. When they stop working, the income stops as well. Imagine two individuals. The first person works 8 hours and gets paid for 8 hours. The second person spends time creating something that can continue generating value after the initial work is complete. Perhaps it's a business. Perhaps it's an investment. Perhaps it's intellectual property, a digital product, or a system. The first person earns once. The second person has the potential to earn repeatedly from the same effort. This is the difference between active income and leveraged income. Active income requires your direct participation. Leveraged income allows your work, money, systems, or assets to continue producing results beyond your immediate involvement. The wealthiest individuals in the world understand leverage extremely well. They don't focus solely on working harder. They focus on creating systems that work harder. A business owner builds processes. An investor acquires assets. A creator develops products that can reach thousands or millions of people. Their goal is not simply to earn money. Their goal is to multiply the impact of their efforts. This doesn't happen overnight. In fact, building leverage often requires more work in the beginning. Many people give up because the rewards are not immediate. A person building a business may work for months before seeing meaningful results. An investor may wait years to experience the full benefits of compound growth. Someone creating a product may spend countless hours before earning their first dollar. The challenge is that leverage rewards patience. The hourly wage rewards immediacy. One pays today, the other often pays tomorrow. And because most people are trained to focus on short-term rewards, they never develop the patience necessary to build long-term wealth. Another problem with trading time for money is that it can create the illusion of progress. A raise feels like advancement. More hours feel productive. A bigger paycheck feels like growth. But if every increase requires more of your time, you may simply be running faster on the same treadmill. Financial freedom requires a different approach. It requires building assets. Assets are things that generate value over time. They continue working even when you're not actively involved every moment of the day. An investment portfolio, a business system, a rental property, a book, a course, a product. These assets create leverage, and leverage creates possibilities that wages alone often cannot. This doesn't mean jobs are bad. Jobs provide income, experience, skills, and opportunities. For many people, employment is the foundation that allows them to build future assets. The mistake is believing that employment alone will automatically create freedom. Freedom comes when your income becomes less dependent on your time, when your money starts working, when your systems start producing, when your assets begin creating value on your behalf. At that point, something powerful happens. You stop thinking only about earning. You start thinking about ownership. You stop asking, how many hours can I work? And begin asking, how much value can I create? That question changes everything. Because wealth is rarely built by selling time forever. It is built by creating value that extends beyond your personal hours. The most financially successful people understand that time is their most valuable asset. Once spent, it can never be recovered. That is why they focus on multiplying its impact, not simply exchanging it. The moment you understand this principle, you begin seeing the world differently. You start looking for opportunities to build rather than merely earn, to create rather than consume, to own rather than depend. And that shift marks the beginning of a completely different financial future. Because as long as your income is limited by your hours, your freedom will be limited as well. But when you learn to separate income from time, you begin moving toward a life where your effort can continue creating value long after the work is done. That is the true path from labor to leverage. And it is one of the most important financial lessons you will ever learn. Chapter 8. the punishment of failure. Think back to your earliest experiences with failure. Perhaps it was a failed test, a wrong answer in class, a poor grade on an assignment. Whatever the situation, the lesson was usually the same. Failure is bad. Failure means you've fallen behind. Failure means you've done something wrong. For years, this message is reinforced. Students are rewarded for correct answers and penalized for incorrect ones. Mistakes are marked in red ink. Grades become permanent records of performance. The goal is not to experiment, but to avoid getting things wrong. As a result, many people leave school with a deep fear of failure, not because they're incapable, but because they have been conditioned to associate mistakes with embarrassment, judgment, and consequences. The problem is that the real world operates very differently. In business, failure is often one of the most valuable teachers available. Every successful entrepreneur has made mistakes. Every investor has experienced losses. Every innovator has encountered setbacks. The difference is that they did not view failure as a final verdict. They viewed it as information. Imagine a scientist conducting an experiment. If the result is not what they expected, they do not immediately conclude that they are a failure. They analyze the outcome. They adjust the process. They try again. Each unsuccessful attempt provides valuable data. Business works much the same way. A failed marketing campaign reveals what customers don't respond to. A rejected product idea exposes weaknesses that can be improved. A poor investment teaches lessons about risk management. Every setback contains information that can improve future decisions. Yet many people never take advantage of these lessons because they are too busy trying to avoid failure altogether. They avoid starting businesses because they might lose money. They avoid applying for opportunities because they might be rejected. They avoid learning new skills because they might look inexperienced. Their fear becomes a prison. Ironically, the attempt to avoid failure often guarantees stagnation. Nothing changes. Nothing grows. Nothing improves. Progress requires experimentation. And experimentation always carries the possibility of mistakes. Consider how children learn to walk. No one expects perfection. Falling is part of the process. In fact, if a child refused to risk falling, they would never learn to walk at all. Yet many adults hold themselves to a completely different standard. They expect certainty before action. They expect success before experience. They expect confidence before effort. When reality fails to meet those expectations, they stop trying. The most successful people understand something different. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is often part of the path to success. Every accomplishment is built upon lessons learned through trial and error. The entrepreneur who succeeds after multiple failed ventures. The athlete who wins after years of losses. The investor who prospers after learning from costly mistakes. These individuals are not successful because they avoided failure. They are successful because they learned from it. Another problem with the educational approach to failure is that it encourages perfectionism. Many people become obsessed with getting everything right. They overanalyze decisions. They delay action. They wait for the perfect moment. But perfection is rarely achievable. And while they are waiting, opportunities disappear. Progress almost always beats perfection. A person who takes imperfect action often learns more than someone who spends years planning without moving. The marketplace rewards execution, not endless preparation. This doesn't mean failure should be pursued recklessly. The goal is not to make careless mistakes. The goal is to stop treating mistakes as evidence that you should quit. Instead, view them as feedback. Ask yourself, what did I learn from this? What would I do differently next time? How can this experience make me stronger? These questions transform failure from an enemy into a teacher. And once that happens, fear begins losing its power. You become willing to take calculated risks. You become willing to try new things. You become willing to grow. This mindset creates a tremendous advantage because most people never develop it. They remain trapped by the fear of looking foolish, making mistakes, or facing temporary setbacks. As a result, they stay in the same place year after year. Meanwhile, those willing to learn from failure continue moving forward. They gain experience. They develop resilience. They build confidence, not because everything goes perfectly, but because they know they can handle imperfection. The truth is that every successful person you admire has failed more times than you realize. What separates them is not talent alone. It is their willingness to keep going after failure occurs. School may have taught you to fear mistakes. Life teaches a different lesson. Mistakes are inevitable. Growth is optional. The people who achieve extraordinary results choose growth. They choose learning over embarrassment, action over hesitation, progress over perfection. And in doing so, they transform failure from something that holds them back into something that pushes them forward. That is the real lesson. Failure is not a punishment. It is data. And the sooner you understand that, the sooner you free yourself from one of the most powerful barriers to success. Chapter 9. The Invisible Script of a 9 to 5. Most people never consciously decide to live a 9 to 5 life. Instead, they inherit the idea. From childhood, the script is presented as the normal path. Go to school, get good grades, find a stable job, work for 40 years, retire someday. This sequence is repeated so often that it begins to feel less like advice and more like reality itself. Few people stop to ask an important question. Who wrote this script? The answer is not a single person or institution. It is a collection of cultural beliefs, educational systems, social expectations, and traditions that have been passed down for generations. The script became popular because for many years it worked. A stable job could support a family. A long career with one employer was common. Pensions provided retirement income. The economy rewarded loyalty and consistency. But while the world has changed dramatically, many of the assumptions behind the script have remained the same. Today, people have access to opportunities that previous generations could barely imagine. Online businesses, digital products, global markets, remote work, content creation, investing platforms, artificial intelligence, multiple income streams. Yet despite these possibilities, many individuals feel guilty for wanting something different. They feel selfish for pursuing financial freedom. They feel irresponsible for considering entrepreneurship. They feel anxious when stepping away from traditional paths. Why? Because the script is deeply embedded in their thinking. The invisible script doesn't just tell you what to do. It tells you what feels normal. And human beings are naturally drawn toward what feels familiar. Even when a better opportunity appears, the mind often resists because the unfamiliar feels risky. This creates an interesting paradox. Many people dream of freedom, but when presented with opportunities that could create freedom, they hesitate. Not because they lack ability, but because they're emotionally attached to the script they have always known. The script teaches that security comes from employment. The reality is that security comes from value. A company can disappear. An industry can change. A position can be eliminated. But the ability to solve problems and create value remains useful in any environment. This is why some people continue thriving even after major setbacks. Their confidence is not based on a job title. It is based on their skills. The invisible script also influences how society views success. Someone working long hours at a job may be praised for being responsible. Someone spending those same hours building a business may be viewed as unrealistic. Someone following a traditional path receives encouragement. Someone creating a new path often receives skepticism. At first, this can be difficult. Human beings naturally seek acceptance. We want approval from family, friends, and society. The challenge is that extraordinary results often require unconventional decisions. If you always think like the crowd, you will usually end up with average outcomes. This doesn't mean everyone should quit their job and start a business tomorrow. That would simply be replacing one script with another. The point is to think independently. Question assumptions. Examine beliefs. Decide what success actually means to you. For some people, a traditional career is exactly what they want. For others, it isn't. Neither choice is inherently right or wrong. The danger lies in living according to a script you never consciously chose. Financial freedom begins with awareness. The moment you recognize the script, you gain the power to evaluate it. You can keep the parts that serve you. You can discard the parts that don't. You can create a path aligned with your own goals rather than someone else's expectations. This requires courage. Breaking away from familiar patterns always does. There will be moments of doubt, moments of uncertainty, moments when the old script tries to pull you back toward comfort. But growth often begins where comfort ends. The people who build extraordinary lives are not necessarily smarter than everyone else. They're simply willing to question what others accept without examination. They refuse to assume that the default path is automatically the best path. And because of that, they discover possibilities that remain invisible to most people. The invisible script of the 9 to 5 is powerful because it operates quietly. It influences decisions without announcing its presence. It shapes beliefs without asking permission. But once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You begin realizing that many of your assumptions about work, money, and success were inherited rather than chosen. And that realization changes everything. Because the moment you stop living by someone else's script, you gain the opportunity to write your own. And that may be the most valuable form of freedom there is. Chapter 10, The New Curriculum. For most of your life, education was something that happened to you. Teachers selected the subjects. Schools determined the schedule. Tests measured your progress. Someone else decided what was important to learn and when you would learn it. But now everything changes, because the most important education of your life begins after formal education ends. The truth is that the wealthiest, most successful, and most fulfilled people never stop learning. They understand something that many people miss. Graduation is not the finish line. It is the starting line. The moment you leave school, you become responsible for your own curriculum. No teacher will assign your reading list. No professor will tell you what skill to develop next. No report card will measure your progress. The responsibility becomes yours. At first, this may sound intimidating. In reality, it is one of the most empowering realizations you can have. Because once you take control of your education, you take control of your future. The new curriculum begins with a simple shift in perspective. Stop asking, "What degree do I need?" and start asking, "What skills create value?" The marketplace rewards value. The greater the value you can provide, the greater your opportunities tend to become. This means focusing on practical knowledge, communication, sales, negotiation, leadership, problem-solving, financial literacy, marketing, investing, entrepreneurship. These skills influence your ability to create results in almost any industry. Unlike many school subjects, their value extends far beyond a single test or classroom. One of the greatest advantages of modern life is that knowledge is more accessible than ever before. A single book can contain decades of experience. A podcast can expose you to ideas from world-class performers. An online course can teach skills that dramatically increase your income potential. A mentor can help you avoid years of costly mistakes. The resources are available. The challenge is developing the discipline to use them. Many people stop learning after graduation because they associate education with obligation. They read only when required. They study only when tested. They learn only when someone tells them to. Successful people approach learning differently. They become curious. They actively seek information. They understand that every new skill increases their ability to solve problems and create value. Another important element of a new curriculum is real-world experience. There are lessons that books can teach, and there are lessons that only action can teach. You can read about investing for years, but eventually you must invest. You can study entrepreneurship endlessly, but eventually you must create something. You can learn about communication, but eventually you must speak. Knowledge without action remains potential. Action transforms knowledge into results. This is where many people get stuck. They become professional learners. They consume information constantly, but rarely apply it. They confuse preparation with progress. The new curriculum requires both learning and implementation. Learn, apply, adjust, repeat. That cycle creates growth. Another critical component is finding the right influences. The people around you shape your thinking more than you realize. If you surround yourself with individuals who constantly complain, avoid responsibility, and fear change, those attitudes become contagious. If you surround yourself with people focused on growth, opportunity, and solutions, those habits become contagious as well. Choose your influences carefully. They become part of your education whether you realize it or not. As you continue building your own curriculum, remember that financial success is not simply about earning more money. It is about becoming more valuable. The marketplace rewards people who solve meaningful problems. Every skill you develop increases your ability to do exactly that. The goal is not to know everything. The goal is to keep growing, to remain curious, to remain adaptable, to remain teachable. Because the world changes too quickly for static knowledge to remain valuable forever. The people who thrive are those who continue learning long after others stop. That is why self-education is such a powerful advantage. It never ends. There is always another lesson, another skill, another opportunity to improve. And unlike a traditional classroom, there are no limits on how far you can go. This audiobook began by questioning the assumptions behind traditional education. Now, it ends with a challenge. Take ownership of your learning. Take ownership of your finances. Take ownership of your future. Do not allow your education to end with a diploma. Let it evolve into a lifelong pursuit of growth and understanding. Because the people who achieve extraordinary success are not necessarily the most talented. They are often the most committed to learning. They understand that knowledge compounds just like money. A lesson learned today can create opportunities for years to come. A skill developed this year can change the trajectory of an entire lifetime. And when you commit to becoming a lifelong student, you gain something more valuable than any diploma. You gain the ability to adapt, grow, and thrive in a world that never stops changing. That is the new curriculum, and it is available to anyone willing to enroll.